Hello and welcome to the Stoic Christian Podcast. I'm your host, Jaron, the founder of the Stoic Christian Project, and today we're talking about 5 key roles that you have to fill as a father in your home. I have 2 children. I have one on the way, and I've learned a lot about this specific area over these last few years. It's been an intense growing season, and that's actually why I started the Stoic Christian Project, is because I was learning what does it mean to be a biblical man, and specifically in relation to being a biblical father and a biblical husband. So hopefully I can share what I have learned with all of you who are listening today to actually help you get better at it. If you're not married, don't have kids, take what you're hearing and start practicing all of this stuff. It'll make it much more easy to actually go about and implement these things if you come in with the expectation that it is supposed to be that way. So, pro tip there. So there are 2 key scriptures that I have laid out, Ephesians 5:25 through 33 and 1 Peter 3:7. Okay, here's what it says. This is the King James Version. It says, "Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might represent it to himself, a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle, or any such thing, but that it should be holy without blemish. So men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his own wife loveth himself." So you might be thinking, what does that have to do with father? It actually has a lot to do with fatherhood because you are co-raising these children with your wife. If you don't have the husband part down, it makes the raising the kids part harder. And again, this is all a journey. So it's not, you can't just expect to have it 100%. As soon as you learn all this stuff, it's practicing and refining it and getting better at it. But what is often described as sanctification. Through God's grace, we can become more and more holy and more like him. 1 Peter 3 verse 7 says, "Likewise, ye husbands, dwell well with them according to knowledge, and giving honor to the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together with the grace of life, that your prayers would not be hindered." Again, having a basis of cooperation with the wife. This takes communication, which we'll talk about actually later on. One of the 5 aspects I have listed here is to be present and to be engaged. Now, I will, again, preface all this saying that this is stuff I'm also working on, actively better at. I'm not saying these things to say I have it all down pat, I know what's happening. I just know what I'm supposed to be doing, and so I'm sharing it with you guys so that you also can learn what you're supposed to be doing, and hopefully we can work at it and get better at it as time goes on. So tip number 1 is to be present and engaged. A verse I had that attributes to that is Deuteronomy 11:19. "Teach them to your children, speaking of them," being the law, the rules, "when you sit down in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up." This is basically saying that this man is around his children a lot. Something that I think is coming back now. I think it used to be a much more hands-off when it comes to fathers and their children. We would have, I know, me growing up, my father would go to work, come home. I was fortunate enough to have a dad that I did stuff with. I was in Boy Scouts, and he was there with me all the time. He was very much present in my life, but there is a sense of like, go to work, come home, and relax. And in some families, it's more divided like that, and there's less time the father's actually engaging with the children. This verse lends to that this man's teaching his children these laws and telling them all these things that God has shared with the people of ancient Israel back in Deuteronomy. So much so that he's sitting down, he's teaching these things. He's walking somewhere, and he's teaching these things. He's lying down for bed, and he's teaching these things. And he's waking up, and he's teaching these things. It's constant, 24/7. This physical presence is very important, and I think this verse exemplifies that extremely well. So, being present, something that we can do, something that I have actually recently been trying to do more of and be more mindful in doing, is with young children specifically. So my children are young, and so what they really want most is to play. They want to play with their mom. They want to play with me and the relatives, whoever comes over and sees them. And so this play is very important. And I think them being exposed to what you're doing is what's going to teach them like how to be a man, how to grow up. For daughters, you're teaching them what to expect a man to be. And so doing all these things and exposing them to what you're doing and how you're acting and how you're living your life is very important. But there's another side of this coin that is also seems to be very important. I don't have a lot of hard evidence for this. It's something I've been playing with more recently. And it's actually playing with them in their space, like in their environment, almost like in their mind, essentially. The idea here is that when they're playing, you go to them and say, "Can I play with you?" And you basically just do what they're doing, right? Play how they're playing. Don't change how they're playing. Don't change the rules of whatever their game is they're playing. If they're playing a game, if they're playing, like I don't know, restaurant, shop, something like that. Play along with them like that. And in my own personal experience, a lot of times they will come to me and say, "Daddy, play with me." And so I don't want to say no. Sometimes I'm busy and I have to say no, but I don't want to say no. And then I'll just kind of do what they're doing. Like, what do you want to do? And, let's say my kid says, I want to play pizza shop. And we had this little pizza maker. It's like a fake pizza maker. It has like, it's Velcro that sticks together and you can make like these fake pizzas. And so he'll make that and he'll bring it over to me. It's in these moments that there seems to be the ability to build some kind of respect from your child. The key here is to be present, be engaged. And the more we can be engaged and be present, the better relationship we'll have with our children specifically. And it's very important. So we can't teach them the things of God if we're not there to do it. And as the Deuteronomy says, when you're waking up, when you're sitting down, when you're going to sleep, to lie down, when you're waking up, when you're walking down the street, all of these things are extremely important. To be in the presence of your child, to be present with them, and to engage with them. If we don't have that, there really isn't much more there's no foundation to build on other than just hoping maybe they form some respect just out of sheer happenstance. I don't want to be a guy who hopes that my children will listen and obey and follow my lead in all things in the matters of faith and practice and just general life. And so actively pursuing situations that will put me engaging with them at a level that they can understand. And so tip 2 we have is lead by example. And the verse I have for this is 1 Peter 5:2 and verse 3. It says, feed the flock of God which is among you, taking the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not by filthy, illegal gain, but of a ready mind, neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being ensamples to the flock. So this is the key word here. The key word is ensample. Ensample means to essentially be the example. If you're the example, you're the guy who everyone looks at for the thing they're supposed to do. And that's what you need to be for the children. This is for the flock. If you're a father and a husband, your flock is your children. You have to be an example of what does it mean to follow Christ. Like, you're the one that has to be that example. And yeah, we're all going to fall short. It's impossible to get it right all the time. You might get like glimpses of it being right here and there. But because of our lack of holiness, we can't be as Christ-like as Christ is. This goes for children and wives. Your flock is your flock. Because everyone that you're entrusted with, as the man, you have to lead them into proper worship, lead them into proper everyday engagements. Everything has to be filtered through the lens of the Christian faith. And if you don't do that, they're going to get some lens from somewhere else. And that's what we need to be avoiding as Christian parents, as Christian fathers, is that we need to show them that this is how we act, this is how we engage, this is how we talk, this is how we everything. It might be obvious for things like religious practices. Like, we go to church every Sunday because we're Christians. This is what we do. This is why we do sacraments. This is why we baptize. This is why we spend time learning catechisms and reading the Bible and singing hymns and psalms, all of these things. That's kind of the easy one, but what about all the other stuff that you do? It's like, you're not just a Christian on Sundays. You're not just a Christian when you go to church. You're a Christian all the time. So as the husband and the father, as the leader of the flock, it's your job to actually model what does it mean to be a Christian tradesman? What does it mean to be a Christian father? What does it mean to be a Christian husband? I use the word biblical a lot to term these things: biblical masculinity, biblical fatherhood, biblical manhood. What does it mean to be biblical? Saying it's one thing, and doing it's another. Our children learn by watching us do, where they learn by our actions. We are the example, the main example they have in their life. When there is discipline, which we'll also get to in a little bit more detail later on in the podcast, discipline isn't necessarily to teach them what they did wrong. They should know that they didn't follow what you did, that you're the example. The disciplining, whether it's corporal discipline like spanking or taking a toy away, whatever the discipline is, the action to correct the wrong action, is there to remind them, essentially. And also, it's not to explain to them, this is what you're supposed to do. It's like, we don't act this way. You know we don't act this way because you know I don't act this way. You've taught this lesson to them before. And the discipline is a reminder about you cannot do this. This is serious. There has to be consequences now. It is a moment to redirect them, not so much to give them shame and agony or to make them feel remorse. It is there to actually redirect them back. Say, what was the example? Like, this is not how we act. We act this way. And you say that so they can be like, okay, that's what we do. But you have to be doing those things too. Right? We are the example. We are the ensample to our flock. And that's very much what point 2 is about, of being and leading by example. Make sure you're doing it all first before you tell someone else to do whatever it is that you want them to do. Tip 3 is to communicate effectively. This one, I will say, this is the thing I struggle with the most. I fall short in being a good example. I fall short in all the other areas that we're talking about here as well. But this one is particularly tricky for me because I am very much considered an introvert. I like to sit on my computer, write code, do my thing, write articles, even sitting here recording podcasts, talk about something that I've already read about, and actually just speaking it instead of having people read it. This is just me. I mean, yes, there are those of you watching live, but it's still just me. Most of my young adult life was just me. Yes, I have family and friends that existed, but there was still a lot of me time. And there's benefits to that. It helped me become a good enough programmer that I could actually have that as my profession, pay the bills with that, pays very well. I don't have to worry about anything as of right now. It's been a blessing, but there's also been some cursing wrong with it because I don't really know good communication. I am learning what that means and what that looks like. And it's very hard for me to do that effectively and do that well. And so the things I want to talk about here are things that I am actually telling myself, essentially. If you are out there and you are listening and you have a problem communicating, I hope this helps you get a little better with me. Let's do it together. All right. So communication is vital for the operating biblical family unit. The husband and wife have to communicate so that they're on the same page about a lot of things that they need to be on the same page about, specifically about rearing the children, raising the children, communicating with your wife about what it is that you expect out of child raising and what she expects out of child raising, and come to a mutual agreement. Though as the head, you do have the final say if you really strongly disagree with what your wife says. And the children need consistent and clear communication in order to grow physically, morally, spiritually. And this has actually been a very interesting learning for me, is communicating with young children. I'm talking like under 5. Most of the time they can't actually say anything back to you. And my oldest son is just actually now able to speak in pretty much full sentences. I can have a conversation with him pretty well. At some point in time that they understand what you're saying, they can communicate back to you what they're thinking and feeling. And that's okay. But talking to them in a way that they understand is very important. And making sure that you're clear when you talk to them. I have a tendency to speak fast sometimes when I talk to my children. Not because I am trying to. Really, I just have a tendency to speak fast, period. And so that translates into talking fast to my children. I asked him, when I talk, is it too fast? You don't understand what I'm saying sometimes? And he said yes. So I kind of remember to slow down my speech for him, and probably for all the children I end up having, because if I don't slow it down, they can't catch what I'm saying. If they don't catch what I'm saying, they can't, one, learn about what I'm talking about, what I'm teaching about the Bible or the Christian faith. If I don't speak clearly and effectively to them at their level so they understand, they're not going to learn and understand. And so when it comes to even disciplinary actions, how can I expect my son to know what to do if what I told him to do, I don't know, say 20 minutes ago, he didn't actually understand because I talked too fast? I mean, this is a very basic thing here. It sounds basic to me right now talking about it, but it matters. It matters because if I tell him not to do something and he does, and it gets on my nerves, how does that look when I have to go and remind him about it? Do I then go discipline, thinking that he knows and he didn't do it? Throughout the life of the child, how do you know what to do about it? Actively listening to what people are saying, listening first before talking, is the most important thing, because then the person that is talking, that you're talking with and is talking to you, they feel understood. They feel like you fully grasp what they're talking about, and that's very important. before you can give them an answer, they have to know that you understand what they're going through. If you jump the gun and start just giving them solutions and to their problems when they didn't finish talking about their problems, then they may come thinking that you're just trying to get it over with and move on. When it comes to children, even like listening to what a small child said is important, and this is something that with my children I really have to pay attention to, because if my child has a problem, they're upset about something, I probably know what it is. I live in the same house as them. I work from home. I know what's going on. I probably know why the kid is crying, why the kid's upset, why he's having a mental breakdown or a tantrum, whatever you want to call it. I want to get it resolved. Instead of just listening to what my son is saying, or sons are saying, especially the older kid who actually can speak in sentences now, he is very long-winded in his explanation of things when things are wrong. And I know what's wrong. Like, I know, son, I know. Listen to dad. I need to be better at letting him just talk and get it out before I give him advice. And this is a relatively new thing that I've been trying out, being more long-suffering, as Christ is long-suffering with us, being more long-suffering and listening to my child brain dump whatever their feelings are emotionally and physically. Not usually physically. Well, actually, the younger kid will be physical, but yes, especially emotionally and verbally. Let them get it out. When I do it, when I remember to do it, it's been a positive on the situation. Yeah, it takes longer because and the kid's crying longer. Or complaining longer, and that's kind of annoying. It's hard because you know what's wrong. You just want to help them because you know that they're gonna have so much more fun once whatever they're dealing with is over. I said playing with them is good to help form leadership and respect. And I think actually just like letting them just get it all out to you, and then once they're done talking, when they run out of things to say, helping them then, that might also contribute to that respect, that building of respect and default leadership. I know for a fact, like the more I play with my child in their environment, in their world, the less I have to pull teeth to get them to follow and act how I expect them to act. They're more willing to just come up beside me and just be like, all right, let's go follow dad around and let's do what he says. It's been very helpful. While there's more opportunities to do that than there is to actually deal with a crying child, thankfully there's more opportunities to play with them. I think that the same thing goes with them. It's like hearing them out, listen to them is going to contribute to that respect that they build for you, like they do whenever you play with them. Tip 4 for being a successful father is provide guidance and discipline. And the verse I have to go along with this is Proverbs 29:15, which states, "The rod and reproof give wisdom, but the child left to himself brings his mother to shame." Guidance and discipline needing to be in a proper balance. Without proper balance, we run the risk of being a dictator. But you have to have some kind of love for the person to guide them down through tough times and guide them through life like you would with a child. But it doesn't mean that there's never any discipline whatsoever. So the first thing we have to do is guide the child. Without teaching them what is correct and what is incorrect, we have no legitimate reason for discipline, especially corporal discipline of wrong action. This is what I alluded to a little bit earlier, is that you have to teach them the things before you can discipline for the things they're not doing. If they don't know what they're doing is wrong, it's not going to do them any benefit. And something that I started doing is letting them know, what is this discipline action for? Why is this happening? And so my younger son is starting to understand now. He's almost 3. And he's finally starting to understand these things. The oldest son, almost 5, he very much understands this. So I'll tell him something like, let's say he's lying about something. I know he's lying about it. He wanted to get out of bed, just get out of bed, the older kid. He said he had to go use the bathroom. I said, you were already in there, like 10 minutes ago. You don't usually have to go to the bathroom after this. He claims that he has to take a poop. I can't deny the kid. I think he's lying about it. I think he's just saying to get out of bed because his younger brother, who sleeps in the same room as he does, is doing this stuff right now. And so sometimes the older kid wants to do it as well. So I told my son, I said, okay, you can go. If you really have to go, Shouldn't take too long. And if we sit there and you don't go to the bathroom, I'm going to have to spank you for lying. And so he knew this. And he still wanted to go. So we said, okay, let's go. And he did end up going to the bathroom. Not a lot. I think he kind of forced it. But I was clear in the situation. I said, you're telling me you have to go to the bathroom. If we go into the bathroom and you don't go to the bathroom, that means you are lying to me. And because you lied, I'll have to discipline you. Because you know lying is wrong. We talk about lying. All the very easy to term sins, I make sure my kids are aware of. And I teach them what that means. So 3-year-old's not going to understand what lying is, or might not understand what lying is. The almost 5-year-old is starting to understand these things. I said I was doing this. I purposely didn't do it. That's the example here, is we have to teach our children what these things mean. And then if we need to discipline them, we make sure that they know what they're being disciplined for. It's much more productive. At least I found it to be, is that the discipline that has to happen is tied to an action that he knows he shouldn't be doing. The discipline we just talked about in regards to keeping them in the correct guidance and disciplining wrong action. That's like corporal discipline, spanking, taking away toys, taking away screen time, whatever. The other part of discipline is the discipline that we kind of used in the term of self-discipline, though these are children, so they probably can't self-discipline themselves. But we have to foster in the child as the child grows. And we do this by teaching right action in situations that are hard, such as emotional breakdowns. It's here that we are able to help them learn to calm down, how to walk away from harm, and to keep trying something even though it's very hard and frustrating. The hard and frustrating thing is something I have a lot of experience with. So the younger child, he is very easily frustrated with things. And the older kid does the same thing. But there is this self-discipline of doing the hard thing, make the work the reward. And this kind of thing is what needs to be fostered in the child, because they don't have that ability to, one, go find that information, and two, even what to do with it when they have it. And so this ties back to us talking about being the example, being the ensample to our children. We have to be exercising our own self-discipline so they can see, oh, that's how dad acts. That situation looks hard. I know it's hard. And my dad's acting this way. He's not letting it affect his emotions. He's not letting his emotions affect his reason and logic. Being the example of that self-discipline is important. And something I do with my children when they are very frustrated with something or they're trying really hard and they just can't get it, I really want to jump in and do it for them. And I know I should not. And I very much do my best to stand back, not touch with the work. But I do give them encouragement. And I praise their effort, not their outcome. I don't know the scientist's name that I heard this from, but I've heard it a few times online and videos about this. And there's a study done about praising kids' effort and praising their outcomes. It showed that when you praise the kids' effort, they will continue to work hard at it, and they often will end up outperforming even the naturally gifted children in a certain area. If the gifted children are to praise on their outcome, they'll usually just give up. They don't exhibit the same outcome. So praising their effort is going to help them build up that muscle strength to push through hard things, push through frustrating things. Like they're working on a project for school one day, be it college or whatever, even out in the future when they're grown and out of the house and they have a job, and their job's really hard and they have to push through this hard thing. And they'll have that drive to just keep getting it done. Like keep trying to make it work and just keep pushing at it. I wouldn't say at all costs, but at a lot of costs. That starts with the child when they're young, playing with a toy that's hard for them to play with, riding their bike was hard to ride, drawing a picture. They might just scribble, but instead of saying, hey, good job, I like that picture, say, hey, looks like you put a lot of work into that. That's great. And the fifth tip is to show unconditional love. I tend to refrain away from using the unconditional love in a lot of things I post about and write about, because we get so drowned as Christian men in the just love, man. And like, yeah, we know that. Okay, like tell us everything else that also exists. Don't just tell us to love, man. It's all you need is love. But that being said, it is important. It is important, But specifically, what is love is also very important. And I'm sure most of you watching this live and most of you listening to this as a podcast understand that. Love in this context is an action. Love is not a feeling. We use the phrase, I love you, to express an emotion. But that emotion is often fleeting. And then what's left? It's your actions. And so the verse I have that goes along with this, tip number 5, is 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. Everybody knows this verse probably. But love suffers long and is kind, and love envies not. It vaunts it's not itself. It is not puffed up, does not behave itself unseemly, seeks not her own, is not easily provoked, thinks no evil, rejoices not in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. The reason why I have this as a 5th tip is that this is exactly what we have to do with our children, all of our flock. But this is about our children and being fathers for our children. I'd even argued that the love we are to give away is not a feeling at all. It's not even us helping to make other people have certain feelings. Love is an action. Love is doing the things the Bible teaches and describes as loving, which is what I just read in Corinthians. And so, the very first thing, love is kind. Be kind to our children. No, what does kind look like? Pray about it, figure it out. Because sometimes being kind to somebody isn't necessarily being nice to them. And that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to understand and grasp. And in that situation, there's a very fine line. If you have to be stern with your child, are you being kind to them or not? Can you be kind to the child while you're disciplining them? Whether corporally or in a sense of teaching them how to be self-disciplining? And obviously, as you express kindness, they'll pick up on that, and they'll also, hopefully, express kindness in their life towards people they interact with as well. One of those translations I saw uses the phrase, love is not irritable or resentful. I don't know what part of that in the King James translates to that, but a few translations use the word irritable as one of the words, which really got me thinking. In some situations, like if it's early morning, I just woke up, I can be really irritable. And it's a lot of work not to take your irritability out on your children sometimes, because they can be irritating, and you're already irritable because you're half awake and haven't had any coffee, and you're hungry or whatever. And the rest of the King James doesn't have the word irritable, but yeah, maybe love isn't irritable. I also put here, it's always better to walk away and cool down and come back and to stay in that irritating situation and become more irritable, because eventually you're going to blow up. And it's going to look better to just walk away for 30 seconds even and just take a chill, pray about it, ask for help from God, and then come back to the situation. It's so interesting how these all are timed together. Loving our children in the ways that 1 Corinthians 13 tells us that love is showing them what to do, which we talked about, guiding them and being the ensample. If we do these things, these attributes of love, these ways that love is, all these descriptions of love that we have in 1 Corinthians, they're going to learn that from us. They're going to learn how to love from us. And if we do it correctly, or as correctly as we possibly can, they'll learn correctly. They'll learn that even though sometimes he's mad at me, he still says he loves me. So love must not be a feeling, because obviously he's not happy with me right now. Obviously he's not proud of me right now. He's angry with me right now because of whatever, or disappointed in me. They're going to learn that earlier on, and that's a very good thing. So that concludes the podcast here for today. If you are interested in becoming a better man of God, join the free 21-day challenge. It's super easy to do. You can hop on Instagram and type the word challenge on any post that Stoic Christian makes, or you can just go to app.stoicchristian.com and sign up for a free account. Thanks for listening to the very first episode of the podcast. God bless, and to God be the glory.